lifelong interest in healing, Dr. Linda Salvin pursued an advanced degree in epidemiology. Then, after dramatic near-death experiences, Dr. Linda saw the other side and returned with gifts of insight, visions, and revealed wisdom. Now those gifts are ongoing, and she's here to share them with you. Get ready to be amazed. It's time for Dr. Linda Salvin's Psychic Solutions podcast with America's original radio psychic, Dr. Linda Salvin, offering up her always fascinating blend of psychic psychology, clairvoyant insights, and expert guests and alternative healing methods. So pull up a chair and get ready for a visit with the one and only Dr. Linda. And now, live from Los Angeles, ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Linda Salvin.
Welcome back, everybody. This is another episode of Psychic Solutions Podcast. I am Dr. Linda Salvin. I got a new camera, so I'm just going to start fussing with it to make sure that everything's aligned properly and try to improve the quality of my little show here. It's not so little. I've been doing it for 30 years. It's big. It's out there. It's on drlindaradio.com. It's on Psychic Solutions on YouTube. It's at... it's at Talk for TV. It's on W4WN. It's everywhere. It's on Facebook. You can download on iTunes and iHeart and 100 other platforms. So wherever you want my show, just type it in, or my name, Linda Salvin, Dr. Linda Salvin. I'm a PhD in metaphysics, and I have done this show for 30 years. I became the original #1 radio psychic, started in 1994, 30 years ago. And during that time, I would say about 6 years later, I was asked to do a TV show called The Conspiracy Theory or something. I don't even remember what it was, but my guest will remember because it's where he and I met in 2001. And Kevin Nealon, the comedian, was the host of that show on cable back then. I'm going to bring on my friend, Don Wilson. We go back, like I said, to about 2001 when we did that show. And he knew Elvis Presley. Now, there's a lot of controversy and conspiracy theories out there that he's alive. He's got brothers. He's got the twin that never died. There's so much, but I am bringing a guy on who knew Elvis. We have pictures. We have story. We have the truth of the spiritual side of Elvis, who was into astral projection, and the Bodhi Tree, which is a huge spiritual, metaphysical, new age bookstore out here that was real small back in the 80s and 70s, and then grew to a monstrosity because the movement of spirituality grew and more people became informed and interested. And of course, the whole spiritual movement and metaphysics exploded. And I'm just part of that ride like you are. So without any more wasting time, I want to bring on Don Wilson. He's calling from, he's actually here. There he is. He's been a little nervous about being on camera. Don, it's a pleasure and an honor that you are doing this. And I know you're not one to do interviews. I mean, you've been on TV and radio and blah, blah, and you've been around celebs forever. But I know how picky you are, and I want to thank you for being courteous and friendly enough to join me on my show, because I know how you are and you don't like this stuff. But because I asked, you said okay. So let's go back to how you and I met. We were in the green room.
Yes, we were. And we were at Raleigh Studios in Hollywood, right across the street from Paramount.
Yep.
And we were at Conspiracy Zone.
That's what it was, a Conspiracy Zone with Kevin Nealon. That was on the Learning Channel back then, or A&E or something.
It was on TNN. It's right.
TNN. That's what I couldn't read. Yeah, so long ago. I don't keep track of all this. I'm glad you do. Go on.
That's me. That's what I do. Yeah. Yeah, and I'm a perfectionist. See, that's the whole thing. You saw me. I'm just not used. I used to be on television. I've done a lot of radio. Yeah, I'm fine with radio. It's just. I was doing some acting for a while. I have a friend, Jason Roop, who was with Central Casting, and he used to put me in these TV shows and stuff. But I didn't like being in front of the camera, so that's why I got behind the camera.
A lot of people are that way. I do both. I've been in movies, I've been on TV, I've done radio, and then after the lockdown, especially with the new wave of how radio and the internet has progressed. We've got Zoom, we've got StreamYard, and all these different platforms. So today's day and age, this is how we are with computers. So Don and I did a show that really was based on skeptics. We had to prove that psychic abilities and spirituality was real. I don't remember your part in it. I think there were about 6 of us sitting in the stools and being harassed. And there was one bully from that magazine that said, "Nah, there's no such thing," and that we'd come by and explain what we knew. And here we are 25 years later or so. But
Amazing.
but that's how we met. So John and I met, and then we've had lunch, dinner, and before he moved out of LA, we'd hang out once in a while and we would talk on the phone or whatnot. But Don knew Elvis Presley. And Elvis was a very spiritual person, not just the musician and the sex symbol, but there was the private side of Elvis that Don got to know, and Don knew a lot of his people. So before we get into how you have a sad background, but I want to touch upon it. You lost your family. I want you to explain what happened when you were 10 years old. And
All
it was
right.
If it's okay, bring it up for a little bit.
Sure, that's fine. Well, I do the Reader's Digest version to try to get it all.
Yeah, because we only have 50 minutes.
Well, my real mother, she had, I guess, what they call postpartum at the time. I was 3 days old, and she banged my head up against the stove, nearly killed me. And so I got some medical issues from that. My father divorced her. He remarried in 1967. And he lived in Dallas area, and I was in Houston. And as a surprise, I didn't even know it. They were coming home, just to my grandmother's house, his mother, for Thanksgiving. And I didn't know that they were going to take me back to the Dallas area to live. He had remarried, and I had 2 stepsisters. Well, in November '71, they were coming across railroad tracks en route to come to get me. There was no crossing signals, and a train hit them, and they were all killed. But my father, stepmother, and stepsister, and that was some psychic stuff going on right there, because I was watching television, and my grandmother was in the same room, and she had 3 poodles, and they all reared up and started howling at 9:45.
What?
PM.
Wow.
Yeah.
Like they sensed it?
Exactly. We couldn't figure out what was going on. And I was watching Family Affair, of all things. And years later, I became friends with Kathy Garver and Johnny Whitaker. And I was with them when I got news of my grandmother's passing, that's kind of eerie in itself. But anyway, later on that night, the officer came to the door, and I didn't have a childhood really after that. And fast forward to the funeral, and being in Texas, and a proud Texan and all of that. My uncle, his brother, said Texans don't cry, so I held back my tears at the funeral.
And you were how old?
I was 10, and for almost 3 years, if Bambi got lost, or if I got upset at any way, I would hold it back. And then one day I was in school, and I started crying, and I couldn't stop. And they took me out of school, and I went on a homebound program, and I started swelling up. We talked about this before.
Yeah.
I was like an elastic man, Linda, and my lips would come out to here. I mean, just everywhere, I had whelps on me. I couldn't get out of bed. I developed a kidney disease, nearly died from that. I still have that, but thank God I don't have to go on dialysis. But it was all because that swelling, evidently, you would know more about it.
Because you suppress the emotions so much. And let me interject here, because I know where you're going. And even the doctors back then couldn't understand it. But me as a metaphysical person, I get inside the body. So, of course, emotion, we eat over it. We suppress it. We drink. We do drugs. We smoke. We have sex. It's just like my Wednesday show about what do we do to suppress the emotions. You were 10. You were told don't cry by somebody that was telling you the wrong thing. It was okay to cry, but back then it wasn't, because guys had to be guys and girls had to be girls. But what your body did was fight. Your body could only take so much of the pain to the point you exploded. And then one day that you started crying and couldn't stop for a long time was letting out all that grief, all that shame, all that fear, all that abandonment, all that trauma. And nobody was really there to help you, hold your hand, or say, Dawn, it's okay. You lost your family. So it was your dad and your stepsisters, and who else got hit by that train?
My stepmother.
Your stepmother. I mean, that, to live like that for the rest of your life, to know that you were 10 and abandoned by an accident, but to spiritually, to see the dogs and to put all this together. I mean, you've been like this, like, oh my God, all your life, like trying to walk the physical and the spiritual and the emotional all together. But through that, you became more spiritual. You became more aware than the average person, because pain gives us awareness, much more so than just, having a cushy life. There's pain in everybody's life, but sometimes you're pushed to the limits.
Yes.
The crying lasted how many years before your body started to get back to its, quote, normal state, Dawn?
Well, like I said, I was fortunate because my teacher, he had an unusual name, C.P. Woody Woodruff, very Wilford Brimley-like fella. And he was a lawyer as well. And he gave my grandparents who were raising me the number to a psychologist. And I got on the homebound program. And I would get a teacher come to my house 2-3 times a week for an hour. And I would do all my homework, and then she'd grade me on the next week. And I saw the psychologists. Some of them weren't too good. Some of them were very understanding. But I talked about it, and it's good to have someone to talk to that can understand.
Absolutely. You need empathy.
Yeah, because my grandmother loved my father so much because she worshipped the ground that he walked on.
Well, she must have been devastated to lose her son, let alone taking care of you, her grandson. I mean, that was hard on her too.
Yes, because right away I was the one that was really trying to take care of her and be the man of the house, even though I was only 10. I never felt 10 again, and I guess in my mind, I was always like a 40-year-old guy, even when I was a kid, But
well, I'm sorry all that happened, but it made you who you are today. For whatever reason, we have karma, we have God, we have life experiences we cannot explain. I don't know why I was in a plane crash, hit by a fire truck, totaled a car, and escaped death so many times. I don't know why they chose me to help people spiritually and psychically, as you know, my work over the years. Why do we go through these challenges or these life-threatening experiences, and yet people like you turned it around? A lot of people just say screw it and stay in bed. Somehow you purged, you cleansed, your body went back to normal functioning, more or less. All that pent up inflammation and water and pain finally came out, and you were free from the jail that you put yourself into when your uncle said don't cry, and to hold back tears. Even I cry at Bambi too when Bambi's lost in the forest, and I see something on the internet and it's like a herd animal versus the way people treat each other. What's been going on the campuses, I can't deal with negative. It hurts. You succumbed, you achieved, you overcame a lot of it. You got out there. Somehow you got mixed up or invited to or around the entertainment industry. So let's fast forward to your experiences in jumping ship, per se, as you matured, teenage years. Were you interested in music or acting? How did you get more? Because a lot of celebrities. You've been around a lot of singers, actors, stars. But how did that start for you? Or was it a part of the way to heal, to feel belonging? Where did it take you?
Well, I got to go back temporarily because of my father. And my father and I went to Los Angeles. He was working there at the time, and I'd never seen L.A. And this is in between him remarrying and all of that, And so I got to see Hollywood in 1966, 1967.
Wow. Okay.
And so he took me on the movie set. I met Jack Webb, and I met Gene Autry at his office because my dad knew Gene.
What did your
And
dad do? Was your dad part of it, or what did your dad do?
well, at that time, he was kind of like on the fringe of it and everything. He had other
Okay.
things that he did, but he was very likable. And if he saw something in the newspaper, he said, "Well, I'm going to go there," and or I want to see this actress. And I met Jane Mansfield back then. I met Sharon Tate. I
Nice.
went, and then I went on the set of Don't Make Waves, and Tony Curtis became a friend of mine years later. I was just a kid, you know, but I learned very quickly that if you're a kid and someone thinks you're cute and everything, they pay a little attention to you.
Right.
So, and so, and I started collecting autographs back then. And not to say I'd get to know any of these people. Now, Mr. Autry, I did get to know a bit, and he eventually, we'll get to that. But as far as it's my dad, because my dad was so jovial, outgoing, and he wasn't as big as Dan Blocker, but if anybody wanted to have a perception of the personality of my father, it would be, Hoss
Wow.
Cartwright, because
Oh,
he had that
of course,
likable
and
way.
Bonanza, of course, yeah, yeah. Well, 1966, when you came out here, I was 12, and I was into the Monkees. Go on.
Oh yeah, right, of course,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's what happened back then. So you started to get your toes wet, your feet wet at a very young age as to what the studios were about and what the celebrity thing was all about. And you met a lot of people. And then is that when you started acting, or you got the bug to get
Well,
front or behind the camera, or did you just like getting the autographs of all the celebrities?
well, my time in Hollywood wasn't that long because I came back to Texas, but
Texas, you got that drawl.
I got something there. But anyway, yeah. But anyway, my father did his best, to put me in situations or bring me up because we weren't able to be to, together because until he remarried in the state of Texas, you couldn't get custody of your own child unless there was a lady in the house. And
Okay,
so,
now I'm confused. Is this the same man that was killed in the train before all this happened, or this is our stepdad? Now I'm confused. Which
no, it's my father. It's my
before the
father.
accident?
Right before,
Gotcha. Okay, I just got to put it. I don't know all of it. I don't know the
right,
time frame.
right. Yeah, I
Okay,
only
okay.
had one dad, no stepdad.
Yeah, okay, but you've got
But
all these memories.
yeah, I had to go back, because he was the one that got me to, because he appreciated the stars and stuff. And in 1970, a year before I lost my family, my dad had met Elvis when
Here
my
we
uncle had,
go. This is what I want.
and when my uncle booked Elvis in 1950, it was late 54 or early 55, I can't remember, at the Eagles Hall or is it the Eagles Nest in Houston. And Hoot Gibson was on the show, and Elvis had only had a few songs out on Sun, and he was very shy. And Elvis liked cowboys, come to find out, and he wanted to meet Hoot Gibson, who was a silent screen star who was making an appearance there, signing autographs or something. My father took him over to meet Hoot, and then they got to talking, and he mentioned that his favorite cowboy star was Gene Autry, and my dad knew Gene, so there was somewhat of a friendship brewing there. But my father didn't really get into Elvis's music, but he liked it for who he was,
Yeah.
and it was almost like it was cowboy pals or something. But Elvis didn't forget him. So 1970 rolls around. I know I jump around, but this is
No, you have to. There's so much. You cannot tell me 60 years of information in 50 minutes. Just you're doing fine. Thank you. Because I want to get to the soul and how you knew. And we're going to bring pictures on momentarily so you can start explaining to the audience all these connections you've got regarding Elvis and his life and your dad's life. I mean, I've talked to so many wannabes, could be's. Oh, I know Elvis. Oh, no, I know his brother and this and that. And I don't think it's all him.
or yeah, or I
Whatever.
am Elvis, or I'm his
Yeah,
brother.
that too. All the impersonators claim to be Elvis reincarnated. Go on.
Okay, well, what it was is that Elvis was going to play at the Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo, and I liked Elvis. I mean, but I really knew more about him.
That's so understated. Well, I liked him. Okay. The whole world
But,
fell in love. And he said,
yeah.
okay, go on.
At the very beginning, I was a big country fan, though, and I was more of a fan of Buck Owens and Roy Clark, and I liked the Hee Haw Show, and they were
I
coming
did
too.
too. Oh my God. Yeah, I forgot about that.
And Bobby Goldsboro, which is a great,
Yeah.
great entertainer. But I was going to see Buck and Roy. I thought the Hee Haw girls were going to be there and all that, but that's, of course, that didn't happen. But my father says, "No, I'm going to take you to see Elvis, and we're going to go backstage and meet him." And I'm like, I didn't know if my dad had ever even been around Elvis. He didn't own an Elvis record or anything. And so anyway, evidently he had gone through Colonel Parker and got a hold of him, and because you had to go through that. And then Joe Esposito, Elvis's road manager, who I worked with later. But anyway, that's who took me up to see Elvis. And he was at the Astroworld Hotel, and he was doing an interview. It was right before he did the interview. And he said, "Hi, I'm Elvis Presley." Like I didn't know. And
did you get scared, nervous? Did you shake, or did you just come like, "Hey, how you doing, dude"?
Well, at first I didn't think it was Elvis because he didn't look anything like he did in Jailhouse Rock or any of the other movies.
Oh, because they had makeup and costumes and hair.
Well, he had a red shirt on. You can see it on YouTube, and he had long sideburns, and he had that mod look. I mean, it was almost like a Beatle hair, really.
Yeah.
Compared to the way you thought Elvis was, but he was so pleasant, and he put you at ease. That's the whole thing.
I've heard that.
So nervous around Elvis, and everything. But then if you meet him, man, it's like you knew him forever. That's how I can meet anybody now. And
you're not intimidated by the look, the soul, which is where you got to know the spiritual side of Elvis, which is the down-to-earth, non-threatening. He's human. He enjoyed reading spiritual books. He talked God. He was much into the gospel as much as, well, a lot of his songs were kind of gospel-ish with the rock bent. I mean, he did like a gospel rock thing that was his own musical tone and slant, because he learned from, I don't remember the person's name, but wasn't there like a black group of women where they were singing more gospel, that he got the beat from, that he got the influence from some religious group? Wasn't that part of his church group? Wasn't that part of his exposure to how he developed his own method and his own melody?
Well, he loved the blues. Well, he loved the blues. He loved gospel. He used to go to the black church.
That's right. I knew something about that.
And he had it in his soul. That's like Sam Phillips was a good friend of mine, and he was the Sun Records founder who really discovered Elvis. And he had a good way of putting it. He said, Elvis's heart beat like the sound of his music, the rhythm of his soul. And I never really thought about the rhythm of his soul, but yeah, you think about that.
Soul is spirit. His is all spiritual. He gravitated to gospel, God, kindness. I mean, yes, he did the love and the romantic songs and all that. He swooned, and that's what made him what he is, with the dance and everything. But it was, if you really hear the words and you really hear how he would come out with the soul expression, you could tell it was who he was. It was like a reincarnation of whatever he had been in a past life came out in this life, all his soul. Let's bring on some of the photos, Rebel, please. Let's let Dawn explain who these people are and to prove. All right, there's Elvis. Where's this one, Dawn?
I'm not really sure. It's in Memphis. It kind of looks like Marlowe's, but that's me over to the right. And that awful hair and skinny as a writer.
It was also what, the 70s? I mean, it was late 60s, early 70s. That's when he had the big sideburns, right? And
this is 75.
Okay.
75, okay. 76, somewhere around there.
Yeah, I could tell by the look. Okay, and there's Elvis on the golf course or someplace. And who's he with?
That's in Hawaii. That's at Elvis's last vacation in March 77. And that's Larry Geller, really one of my closest, dearest friends. He was Elvis's hairstylist, and he was apprenticed to Jay Sebring in Los Angeles.
Okay, yeah.
And he left Jay to work for Elvis, and he was more of his spiritual advisor. And he brought
Wow.
a lot of spiritual books to Elvis, mainly from the Bodhi tree, which I know you
Yes,
enjoy.
on Melrose. Yes, sir. Yep. Wow. Is Larry still alive?
Yes, he is.
Is he
And
out here in California or is he
he makes his home in Arizona now,
Arizona?
and he's still active. He's maybe he'll do your show. I don't know.
Well, I was just going to ask, maybe the two of you could come on together. We could do another episode. Let's talk about that later. Let's go on from Larry. Who's next?
Okay, that's Charlie Hodge. That's someone who became a very close friend of Elvis's. Lived at Graceland, and he met Elvis, or Elvis met him in the Army. And he consoled Elvis when he found out about his mother's passing, and that made him a longtime friend. He gave Elvis his scarves on stage, sang harmony with him.
Yeah.
So that's Charlie. Unfortunately, he's gone. That's Charlie.
Yeah. Yeah.
A long time ago. See how skinny I was?
We all were. I could pull out my thin pictures too because I bitch every day. Oh my God, how come I don't have that little body? Oh, I'm not thin. I'm a little chunky compared to LA people, but I'm average compared to the rest of the world. I don't know, but I am who I am now, and I'm really getting tired of fighting it at the age of 70. Okay, who's this?
This is Sam Thompson. He was a security guy for Elvis, and he became a judge in Memphis.
Right,
and,
right.
He's Linda Thompson's brother, a very close friend of Elvis, and he's one of the nicest guys you'd ever want to talk to. Sam. Yeah, I love Sam. He's great. Richard Davis. Richard and I were very close. He was like my brother. He was Elvis's bodyguard, movie stand-in, and I just a lot of I can talk about Richard.
Go ahead. Go ahead. Take it for a minute or two. We got another 25, 30 minutes. Go on.
Okay. He was one of the original members of the Memphis Mafia. He and Jimmy Kingsley were hired in the back room of Elvis's house, of all places. He said, "Hey, I'm going to Seattle to do the World's Fair movie, and I need some security. Would you like to come along?" And so Richard said yes, so did Jimmy. And he stayed with him until he had a pinched neck around 71. He still got to hang around Elvis, but not in the capacity of working for him. But one of the nicest guys you'd ever want to meet. Sadly, he passed away. But there's a lot I could tell you about Richard.
Have you been asked or considered to put all this in a book?
Yes, and there's a friend of mine in Los Angeles that really wants me to do it. I might,
You've got stories a lot of people will never have.
Well, I did do a documentary series with Joe Esposito, who's
I know the name. I don't know.
Definitive Elvis in a nutshell, so we can get back to our topic. I did 16 hours, and I interviewed over 200 people that knew Elvis and celebrities and so forth. And one of the shows was called The Spiritual Soul of Elvis, and that's one of the reasons.
I just got chills. So we know he's here and you're telling the truth, because chills is a confirmation of spirit. Go on. I just love you, Don. Go on.
I love you too, dear.
Weren't we at the Hamburger Hamlet or someplace on Hollywood Boulevard one day, or across the street from the Chinese theater we met and had? Wasn't it the Hamlet? Or some other restaurant? I just
Hamburger Hamlet.
Didn't we have lunch? Yeah, long time ago, long time ago, 20 years ago.
And I just had lunch there not too long before with Marilyn Mason, who was she was an actress, still is, and she was in trouble with girls with Elvis. But yeah, you just trigger me, and I get all these other thoughts.
Yeah, that's what happens. You say one thing, and 5 more stories pop up. Go on. Let's go back to the spiritual soul of Elvis in the documentary. Let's talk about that and why we named this segment "The Spiritual Soul of Elvis." Because there's this whole other side the world doesn't know. And while you're doing that, I'm going to go get this book and I'm going to show you something. Just talk about the documentary. I'll be right back.
All right. Well, the first person that I knew I had to have for the documentary, of course, was Larry Geller. And he came right on board. And then I talked to Sandy and Wink Martindale and, George Klein and, on down the line, and everybody, of course, was able to talk about Elvis's spirituality, like Ray Walker of the Jordanaires. He was privy to a lot of that, and he sang gospel, the Jordanaires and him, and his favorite music. And J.D. Sumner, his backup singer, said that Elvis was God's bell sheep, because
Wow.
he brought a lot of people to God through his music. There was one guy who was an atheist and he didn't believe, and he was a fan of Elvis, and he heard How Great Thou Art, his album, and he became a Christian because of it. But Elvis always thought that God put him here for a reason, and he knew the Bible, he knew of the different religions. He was a seeker. He wanted the truth. He wanted to know. He would love the internet now. He would
Yeah,
be
I
on.
bet. To
Larry and I
do
both
all the
agree.
research and dig.
Right. And Larry told me once, he said, he probably would be on the internet, Facebook, and nobody would believe it was him, but he probably would be there.
Well, there's a lot of people pretending to be his brother, and that there's really 4 brothers, and that it's really him, and all that stuff. No, that's why you're here, to just to break all that. What I wanted to do was the only book I ever bought on Elvis. I loved his music, and there was a time, it's called The Illustrated Elvis, and it's a picture book. It's a picture book, and it's still in the plastic or the vinyl cover, which they don't make books like this anymore. But I got it at a garage sale one time for like $1, but I knew it was going to mean something to me someday. I have one of the albums. I remember him in college when he passed in 77. There were times I was a fanatic, and then it was a little after my generation that he wasn't as popular, but I always loved his music, and I was kind of shy in admitting the kind of music I loved when I was around certain people at school that were more rock and roll, but I would go for the Supremes or Elvis. I went for the depth. I went for the meaning of the lyrics. I went for the sound, not just the rock and roll that was coming up. I wasn't a rocker that much as I was a folk artist. And then with Elvis and all of his dance moves, I mean, there's hundreds of pictures. This is a whole picture book, folks. But Elvis was one of a kind. You will never have anybody like that. And I wanted Don to come in because this was his friend. You spoke, you talked, he cared, he knew your dad. You had a personal relationship with one of the biggest stars in the world. And yet, when you were around him, you were just another person with another person. And that's what I want people to understand. In our culture, we put so many celebrities on these pedestals that they're bigger than God, that they're not human, that their blood's not red, or they don't have problems. And the more money they have, the more problems they have because they got more people after them, or there's contracts or whatever. But you knew the soul of this human being, just as he got to know the soul of this man named Don Wilson, who went through hell, and he knew your father, and you lost your dad. Did that ever come up in conversation? Did he ever take you under his wing? Did he ever, besides grieve, there must have been something that happened along that time frame too? It's hard to talk about, and I don't know how to phrase it without hurting you, but it's part of your story.
Well, I guess I can say this. When I first, I wasn't around Elvis a lot because I was a teenager, but I was able to be around him enough.
Yeah.
And the thing is, when I first went up to Graceland, he took me into his trophy room, and I was just like, what can I say? I was just like, what can I say to him? And I said, this is amazing, Elvis. And he said, it's all but for a day. And he went like this, his outstretched arm. And
but he's right. He's right. He's right. I have awards. And after a while, they just sit there and collect dust. Nobody knows except if I make it known. And you've won things or you've had things. And after a while, even though you were awarded, after a while, it's like, that's nice. Next, right? You don't just sit there and go, wow, I got this award. After a while, it calms down. Go on, Don. Go on. That's what I love about you, because you see the human side of people because of everything you've been through.
Well, yeah, I'm just me. I mean, it's my experiences. Nobody else had them. There's a lot of people that act like they were his closest friend. I'm not going to do that, but he cared enough to give me time that he had, and he showed that he cared. He said, well, he had compassion for people. That was the whole thing. It's like he said on several occasions. There was a street named Elvis Presley Boulevard right outside Graceland. It still is. He says, "I'm not that street out there. You cut me and I bleed." And that's just the way he was. And Richard Davis, who we talked about, said that Elvis would probably have put me to work for him, had he lived, because he liked me. So I mean, that came, I would have liked that, and I was devastated, of course, when he passed away.
Of course.
And I have the last known letter that he ever wrote. It was 2 weeks before he passed away. He only wrote like a handful of letters in his life. And
can you paraphrase what he said to you?
He thanked me very much for my concern and support, and just gave me best wishes, and ended with "God bless you." It was just an appreciation, thank you note from home.
No,
and he signed it. And so, I mean, I'll never let it go. I mean, it's just a lot of people want, well, you should have it authenticated. I don't need to have it authenticated,
It's real. It didn't come from one of the record studios saying, "Here's your autograph photo of Elvis," where they just have somebody taking a black marker. "Oh my God, I got an autograph." They don't realize that some assistant signs, or they're just pre-printed or whatever. Most people think it's the real thing half the time when it's just PR. They don't understand what you and I do. Yeah.
I was at his last concert, Linda. And because I got to go to several of the concerts, and he introduced everybody. You can see it on YouTube or hear it anyway. He introduced everybody it's like he ever knew that was there that night. If he knew the name of the janitor, he would have called him out. In fact, he introduced me. He introduced the Aldens.
That's so special.
He was dating Ginger Alden at the time, and he introduced her and her family. And then he said, "And Don Wilson," kind of like a throwaway line. Nobody knew who it was.
But he did. It meant something to him.
Yeah, and of course, nobody applauded, and he laughed, So, but anyway, it's just a nice little memory,
But it's an honor. It's an honor.
Yeah, wow. I'm trying not to forget anything, because so much that I want to, delve with.
Jennifer, go.
That was just my phone. Go ahead.
Okay. There was so much I want to say about, him, spiritually, because.
All right. Yeah, we have about 10 minutes left. So let's go into the spiritual life and soul of the Elvis Presley the average person never knew. Go.
Mm-hmm. Well, he gave from his heart. He was one of the most generous people that I ever knew. And his heart was really on his sleeve for people. In fact, he never took deductions for any of the donations that he gave to charity, because when the IRS came around, because he said, if you take it back, you never really gave it in the first place. He was very giving. And you couldn't say anything to him like, "Oh, that's a beautiful watch, Elvis," because he'd give it to you. Or you can say, "That's a nice lamp over there," which is like what Sandy Martindale's mother said one time. You should take it.
Yeah, I had somebody around me that every time I would meet this person who was kind of had me on a pedestal of the celebrity thing with the radio, and I would always get compliments of something. So, "Oh, you want it?" And I would give this person certain things. And after a while, I got tired of the compliments because I started to catch on. Like, okay, enough. But he was different. I am like a pebble of sand compared to where he was. But I understand that generosity. He was a Capricorn, right?
Yes, January 8th.
So am I, and I'm January 12th. So we have that.
There you
We're
are.
up on the outside, but we'll give and we'll bleed our spleen and give from our heart, but we get taken advantage of, myself included. I can speak from the Capricorn loyalty. There's a loyalty that we have. What's your birth sign? What are you?
I'm Aries, April 5th.
Okay, so you're fire. You're out there and you don't stop no matter what happens. Go on more about the soul of Elvis. Did he ever give you something that you still have besides the letter? Do you have, I doubt you got a scarf, but I mean.
Well, he gave me, I have some of his clothes. I have a book called Leaves of Gold, which is a lot of poems by a lot of different people. And it's, you could say it's spiritual, it's touching stuff. He gave me some books on, metaphysics and exercise and different things, but
Which is probably why we connected, because we were spiritually bonded. Out of all the people, you're the only one from that broadcast of that show we did. I didn't keep in touch with anybody else, especially the naysayer, the guy from the magazine that was so skeptical.
Yeah, it was Skeptic Magazine. I remember that guy.
Oh, that's what it was. You're right.
And I remember everything,
I used to.
But I was 15 and I went to the Baylor College of Medicine, and the doctors told me I was going to die within a year. I picked out my coffin and everything,
Because of the swelling and because before you started crying and releasing everything?
Well, because I developed kidney disease, okay. And I was in a lot of pain, I was sweating profusely. And anyway, Charlie Hodge got me in to see Elvis, and he was in the racquetball court, and I went in there, and he said, well, you're not going to die. And he told me to sit down, and he put his hand behind my back. And it was kind of like a Reiki healing.
Mm-hmm, that's what I do.
And I have a certificate for that too, because of this. And he said, I'm not going to do anything. He says, I'm the conduit. He says, God is going to be
do the work for you.
And I did go into remission. And I went to the Baylor College of Medicine in Houston with my grandparents. And the doctors were very confused and very upset. Well, you're in remission. It's there, but you're not having the issues that it looks like you're going to live. It's like they were depressed I was going to die. And then what happened?
Well, it was also that they were upset that they didn't fix you. They weren't the actual healer. Their egos were blown, that there's more. And that's, I don't want to toot my own horn, but it comes back to why I do the work I do, because I've done where some doctors, I pick up where they leave off, and I've helped people. And you know that about me because you know my work. Yes. And yes, there is spiritual energy that comes out of certain people's hands. And there's energy that we can actually heal the body. Your kidneys were inflamed from holding in all the emotion all those years, from losing your family and suppressing everything that the kidneys, which is part of the digestive system, couldn't recycle what you were holding on to. The urine, everything was backing up and bloating you and making you sick. And no matter what they did to drain or whatever, once you had that purge cycle where you started crying, you started healing. Now, what was his name, Trey? What was his last name that did the healing? What's his name? Don, did we freeze? Don?
Oh, who did the healing?
What was his name? That got you backstage. What was his name?
Oh, you mean Charlie Hodge.
Charlie Hodge.
It wasn't backstage. It was that's what threw me off because it was at Graceland. I went to.
At Graceland. Okay, there's so much.
His racquetball court.
Oh, the racquetball court. Okay.
I thought you were talking to the assistant there. I'm sorry.
No, that was me.
That was Charlie. Charlie, he lived at Graceland.
Yeah. Well, whose picture we saw.
I run into him at the Hickory Log, and he said, he always told me, he said, Bud, you look like hell. He said, what's the matter? So he said, well, I'm going to take you up to see Elvis. So that's what happened. I was with my girlfriend at the time.
Well, seeing Elvis, was that kind of like a healing moment? Just seeing him was kind of comforting, and it gave you some relief of the anxiety or the pain, and maybe you would perk up like as a little God shot.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, he was so up and everything. I remember one time Richard Davis and I went in to see him, and he was in the den. Well, they call it the jungle room now, and he said, don't tell me anything bad. No bad news. He says, don't bring me down. He says, I don't care. There's a cat up in the tree. I don't want to hear about it. You take care of it. But he didn't want to come down, because he was very up, and that's why he generated. It's like I asked Elvis about, him. I said, when you come in, I said, I don't know if anybody's ever told you this or anything, because I would do it. And I said, but I can feel you come into the room, It's
Yeah, his
like,
presence. He's got an energy.
and then I said to him, he says, well, what is it? He said, it's not me.
No, it's God. It was soul. It was spirit.
He said, charisma is God's light shining through man. That's what he told me. And I told that to Glenn Campbell, and he used to, say, well, let me tell you what Elvis said. He loved that.
Yeah, we lost
God's
Glenn
light
too. I
shining
was
through
at
man.
Glenn's last concert. I remember when he was starting with his dementia and Alzheimer's, and his daughter took over. I remember all that. We've gone through a lot of beautiful, wonderful, talented people. You've had your finger in a lot of different pies behind stage, photos with tons of celebrities. I think it's time for you to get your book out.
Well, maybe so. I might.
Yeah, or you can have a ghostwriter do it for you. You don't have to do the writing. You just dictate the story and have your name on it. But it's the truth. But the spiritual part of his soul, I understand that, but I never understood it growing up. I didn't know more than the gyrating guitar playing singer. As I evolved in metaphysics, as I became more attuned to the real world of entertainment and what people do when we put them on, pedestals. And like, he's right. If you cut him, he bleeds blood. I tell people of different races and what's going on with all the anti-Semitism or the racial slurs or whatever. You cut us open. I don't care what color, where we're from. We all have red blood. We're all human. Some have talent, some have addictions, some have families, some have purpose, some are still searching, some want to know God. I'm not a Christian, I'm a Jew, but I've seen the Christianity, I've seen the Judaism, I've seen the Buddhism, I've seen Hinduism, and I don't care how you get there. When you find that God within yourself and however that higher power or source or feeling envelops the soul, and you can trust that there's something out there besides us as humans, but it works through us and communicates or gives us lyrics or gives us hope or gives us a healing ability or tears. It's all God. Where do the stars come from? Where do the butterflies come from? Why are you still alive, Dawn? Why am I still alive? Because our God has more for us to do for people out there who need to hear from us and share, give, and educate in our own way. We have about 2 minutes left in this broadcast, and I want to thank you for taking the time to go over some of this. And I want to have another episode. And yes, we should get Larry involved. I would love to hear the second.
And Mindy
opinion.
Miller, because Mindy was one of Elvis's girlfriends, and so she used to share things with him spiritually as well. And so,
well, then why don't we talk and we'll put together a trilogy, because there's enough space on this monitor. I think we can have 10 people at once. We can have a round robin. But this is Don Wilson. Don Wilson grew up in a terrifying situation, overcame a lot of adversity, but has made the most out of his life. And there's a lot more to go, but he was a close ally of Elvis Presley, people. This man knew Elvis because his father knew Elvis. And with all the controversy and conspiracy out there, this is the man that's going to tell you there was a real spiritual soul in the Elvis Presley that we came to love and know musically and performance-wise. But he had a heart of gold. He cared about people. And there was only one Elvis Presley.
Yeah.
Don, stay backstage. You're almost going to cry. I can hear you getting choked up. I can feel it too. I'm going to say thank you. We're going to go backstage and I'll be with you in a moment. You have a wonderful day. Everybody, thank you for listening. Thank you. And we'll have more with everybody else. This is Dr. Linda Salvin. This has been the spiritual soul of Elvis. That's the topic today. What we can really learn about the true Elvis Presley. that the world doesn't really talk about, the spiritual side. We'll have more on this coming up in the next couple of weeks. In the meantime, if you want me to reach me off the air, listen carefully as the ending goes, and you can find where to reach me at lindasalvin.com, or you can go to Psychic Solutions Podcast on YouTube, Dr. Linda Radio, which is my own station. We play all my old shows plus shows from 20 years ago. Whatever you like, it's all here. I'm Dr. Linda Salvin, a psychic medium and a healer, and I'm here for all of you. And like Elvis, I'm a Capricorn, so yeah, I come off tough, but I've got that soul of love where I'll give to you whatever I can. Take care, everybody. Have a great week, and we'll see you soon.
Thanks for joining us. We hope you enjoyed Dr. Linda Salvin's Psychic Solutions podcast. You can reach Dr. Linda at 888-509-1077 or at lindasalvin.com. Need a breakthrough of your own? Ready for answers or insights nobody else has? Reserve your own one-on-one in-person chat. Dr. Linda isn't just for other people. Dr. Linda gets results for you. And it's easy. Contact details are on screen now. Just click on lindasalvin.com or call toll-free 888-509-1077. That's lindasalvin.com or toll-free at 888-509-1077.